Today on the Brand Aid podcast.
What does their exit look like? The sooner you start planning that means to an end, right? Thinking about what the exit looks like, the better the likelihood of it being successful.
Welcome to Brand Aid, where we answer the question, what does it take to launch your own brand revolution, create evolution, and who are the people that help you foster connection, community, contribution, and currency for a brand built to last. You will also meet brands changing the world and the lives of those they serve. Here's your host, Cheryl Hodgson.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Brand Aid podcast. I'm your host, Cheryl Hodgson. Today, I welcome JP McAvoy, who is an attorney from Ottawa, Canada, who also practices law with conduct law in Canada and the United States. And JP is the founder and managing partner of Conduct Law. He practices corporate and commercial law, and he's also a business consultant, and he acts for clients buying and growing and selling their businesses. And we are going to have so much fun in this conversation today, JP, because we've had the opportunity and the privilege to not only meet before, but have some discussions. And our audience is going to learn so much because your brand is about being the millionaire's lawyer, and you help businesses grow their companies to sell them at a good price. Is that a fair statement?
That's a very fair statement, Cheryl. Thank you, first of all, for having me on the show. And it's wonderful to be working with you here as well, because you say we've done some wonderful things in the past before. The millionaire's lawyer is just that. I've been a lawyer for many business owners who have grown and sold their businesses. I've helped them sell their businesses for 6-7 figures, right? Some even, I've even worked with people that have become billionaires as they've grown and sold their businesses. So certainly some of the lawyer-proven strategies to help people grow have become a moniker of mine, and things that I work and help people to do if they're interested in duplicating for themselves as well.
So what have you learned over the years in working with someone where you get to witness the client grow from startup or small to that exit strategy of the 8-figure business and beyond? You know, is there some special sauce that each one has, or is there a theme?
No, there is a secret sauce. I think it's an entrepreneur, right? There's an entrepreneurial spirit. You see that in entrepreneurs that are able to build and grow businesses. They all have a different mindset. We talk about people who are employees, and there's nothing wrong with employees. Obviously, we all businesses thrive with employees, but there's an entrepreneurial mindset that's different. That is a creator. That is somebody that is looking to build something maybe different, or a legacy in a way that an employee might not. An employee punches out at the end of the day, where an entrepreneur, they never sleep they're always dreaming about what the next phase is going to look like for their business. And so that's that one thing I see consistent from business owners that really make it, is that they're relentless in their pursuit of their goal.
Yeah. And it's got to be fascinating to have that experience, because I know I've had that as an attorney with my own clients, from time when it's not litigation, when it's a business client, right? Which makes that more rewarding, I think, to
Absolutely.
be part of that.
You see their energy and you feed off it yourself.
Yeah. So what is your secret sauce and what do you contribute to that journey, that entrepreneurial journey?
Excuse me, I got a bit of a cold as well. I think one of the big things that I contribute is I give them a ramp for taking off. And I say that in a way, I've worked with entrepreneurs and early in my career as a lawyer, and as a lawyer as well as an attorney, you have training to look for problems, and you look at problems, and things tend to get bogged down in problems sometimes. As an attorney that's worked with people who've grown, I realize it's not a question of finding the problem, it's finding the solution, giving them the ability to leapfrog to where they need to get to. A lot of business owners, as I've seen them, they might have that energy we described or the mindset, but a lot of times they're quite disorganized. And as an attorney, you can come in and sort of look to see where the disarray is and give it some structure. And as I say, I call it a ramp, like a platform for the launch. Really important to accommodate the growth if an entrepreneur is to be successful.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, because I think one of the challenges for a startup, and do you work with startups as well?
I do. I mean, it's more frequently established businesses, but on occasion, and especially if it's somebody that's got a history of doing successful startups, they might come to see me earlier in the process as well.
Yeah.
So traditionally, there's something that's a bit of a following, but certainly from the beginning, if I can get my hands on it, I'll be there to help.
Yeah, well, I asked that because I know that there's sometimes the real startup, they really don't even know, they don't know what they need. They don't even know where the entrance to the ramp is. as far as how to really go about it. So I think that having someone like you is really quite valuable. You have a book that's come out or is coming out very soon, The Millionaire's Lawyer.
Yes. How to grow and sell your business for maximum profitability. So it's this, what we're describing just here. And in it, I given a series of examples of business owners I've worked with and talked about some of the experiences I had with them and some of the secret sauce, what you describe as the secret sauce, but some of the secrets that I've learned by watching and helping them grow. So I detail in those books and give an example of some. When I say some entrepreneurs that have gone on to become billionaires. For example, one of the first that I cite is the time I worked with Elon Musk and his brother Kimball Musk, one of the first company that they started, and saw that grow. And subsequently the different companies they've launched since. Well,
how do you help people and in your process to grow and exit a company for successful?
Key thing, so as a corporate lawyer, key thing is the structure of the company itself. A lot of people come in, they don't know what they don't know, right? So they might come in and they might realize they don't have things structured for the growth. So that growth and a proper structure will allow the introduction of new shareholding and people to help finance things, because you need a legal structure to allow you to do it, and you need to have it built on a platform that will allow other people to participate in it. So one of the first things I do is look at the structure of the company and make sure it's organized for growth.
Yeah. And you and I have talked a little bit about this in the past because I obviously have a specialization in soft IP and have worked as an intellectual property lawyer for years.
Yes.
But I mean, in your experience, does IP and the brand go into the value of a business when it comes time to sell or exit?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely it does. It depending on how we have things structured, we may have a separate company that's licensing technology, but if the idea is to sell the IP as well, then certainly it's an asset, and anything that's been patented or anything that's proprietary that's been protected is going to be of great value to a purchaser, and they'll look at it accordingly. They'll decide how they're going to pay for it based on the value of the assets, and IP will be one of the important assets they're purchasing.
Yeah. Well, you just mentioned something I think is interesting. I don't want to just gloss over it. We were talking about a separate company that would license the technology. Could you give me an example of when that would be of value and how you would use that as a tool?
Absolutely. So a lot of the times we'll separate, the technology into a separate company to, first of all, credit proof it, right? So to protect the asset itself. And then when it has been separated out, we can, with a series of licensing agreements, decide how it's to be exploited. One of the reasons or one of the times when it can be really valuable is when you're looking to license in multiple jurisdictions. So you have a company that will be licensed to somebody in, let's say, North America, right? So you give Canadian and U.S. rights to a company to license that technology, and they may take off with it and run it on their own and be able to grow it in that way. Similarly, you may do something for Europe, and you might do something for Asia. So you'd break it up into a series of license agreements and then have others do with it as they can to maximize the value.
Actually, I think that's a fascinating tool. I mean, it makes a lot of sense in technology. I've actually seen that to some extent with brands and branding. Mm-hmm. There's something called IP holding companies that some companies use out of Delaware, multinational brands, where they will actually hold all of the trademarks and brand names in one IP holding company and license it to subsidiaries in different countries and take back a royalty. That is the income stream that generates, so that it's taxed at a lower operating profit in status.
That's right. So it's taxed at a lower rate. So when we talk about this, I mean, a big part of it, the maximizing value, is obviously reducing tax. So that's one effective way to do that. And then as we talk about maximize the value as well, is to have perhaps leveraging or using others and what they're good at. So somebody might be good for marketing in a different jurisdiction, to allow them to take it and run with it. And that's going to maximize the value for you. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is another thing that I don't know if you've ever run into this, but I've heard two examples. And one is actually was a winery up in Paso Robles. And this was about 6 or 7 years ago. I did a webinar, a workshop up there for wineries. Uh-huh. And the story, it was all public knowledge. And I can't remember the name of the winery, but it was the man was considered the legend of all the winemakers up there, because he was the first one that really started putting out great wine in the Paso Robles area about 25 years ago. Somehow he lost his name in the company because he had outside investors and was no longer the majority shareholder. And I just had a similar experience. I have a client that I formed a company for about 6-7 years ago, and she and the partner have decided that they're going to dissolve or no longer be partners. And the one good piece of advice I gave her, because she had a really great name that she had used for 10 years, was we left the trademark and the name in her name and licensed it to the LLC. So now that's off the table. When they dissolve or he leaves the company, he has no interest or rights in the name. So
you can just right there. I mean, it's time and time again where people say the value that the attorney adds, right? That's invaluable what what you did for them, because the business owner doesn't usually appreciate at the, certainly at the outset what's actually occurring. But as you say, simply by separating the ownership of the name and then licensing it, you maintain control. I've had a handful of clients similarly be ecstatic with some advice I'd given them earlier on. When, as you know, as attorneys, we see situations like it's not the first time for us to see a lot of these things. And so that's why we're able to advise the business owner, look, you might want to protect this in this way because this might happen. Yeah, I know everything's rosy right now.
Yeah, everybody thinks, it'll never happen to me, right?
It never happened to me. It never happens, right? But as a lawyer, we've seen it and we know how to protect people for it. So, a good example is a good operating agreement, right? Or a good shareholders agreement or a good partnership agreement for these people when they're working together to make sure all those things are discussed beforehand in the event that if it actually does blow up or break up, they know what they can do with the actual assets. It's very important to have a
I think that's important because I think many people know what it is, but why is it so important to have either an operating agreement for a limited liability company or shareholders agreement for a closely held corporation?
I think they're vital. Obviously, a lawyer's going to say this. We see this for almost anything else. They are the operating manual for your business, and they entrench and they're treated in high regard in law, certainly by the courts when they're properly done, so as to determine how the company is to be run, what's to be done with the company. So I call it the operating manual. It is there in good times and bad, and it's really important, especially in the bad times when things go awry, to go back to and say, hey, look, what did we say was going to happen? A company needs money, as an example. If a company needs that money, I see this time and time again, in the absence of an operating agreement, of a shareholders agreement, dictating that shareholders will kick funds in, there's no legal requirement to fund a company. So I've had shareholders say, look, that's it. That's all I'm putting into this company. And the company's died. It's died on the vine because the shareholders weren't willing to continue to support it. You get a good shareholders agreement in place that makes it clear that, yes, we may finance or seek financing from elsewhere, but if we can't, we're going to keep this company alive. We're going to self-finance if need be. In the absence of a good shareholders agreement, that's not a legal requirement.
Wow, that's something I wouldn't have even thought of as important, but I think it's vital. Well, I do know, here's a kind of a modern day example back to my brand or trademark question. And this is is a personal, only because I loved the brand and they're gone now, which is, it was over 100 years old, which was Barney's Department Store, founded out of New York, like 120 years ago. And long story short, this has been all over the media. About 6-8 months ago, the landlord in their New York Madison Avenue location raised the rent by $30 million in 1 year and literally almost put him out of business overnight. So they went into a reorganization for bankruptcy, and they spent 6 months trying to find financing, and purportedly they had all these investors lined up, and it all sort of fell through at the last minute. And literally, it was only like the 1st of December. They went into court and the bankruptcy judge ordered the entire company sold off overnight. Mm-hmm. Yep. And some kind of troll came in and bought the name out of the bankruptcy. And they've already licensed it to Saks Fifth Avenue. And Barney's, as everyone has known it for over 100 years, is over and gone. And the only thing left was the name. And that's a perfect example. Had somebody licensed the name into the company, it would have been sold off.
Yeah, they would have been able to protect that.
They could have started all over again,
Absolutely.
And now it's dead. And it was tragic. I actually went in the store and was almost in tears. Not because, it was a pretty high-end store, but what made it special and unique, which was their brand, was they launched many, many designers, fashion designers, who were nobody and unknown, who went on to become famous. And that was the platform where many of those young brands got started. So, it's so easy to think that you talked about building a legacy. And I think that's so important. Whether you are CEO of your own evolving brand, or you are serving as guide and mentor to other emerging brand owners, it's important to include legal protection for valuable brand assets Brand names and logos, as well as other intellectual property, are often the most valuable business assets a company will ever own. Registered trademarks or product names, logos, and slogans are a potent weapon against domain hijackers, cyber squatters, as well as other later entrants into the market. In my international best-selling book, Registered Trademark, The Business Owner's Guide to Brand Protection, I reveal my simple 3-step process to help select, secure, and sustain protection for your own brand dream team. And I'll share how to bulletproof your business both online and off. As my special gift to our listeners, you can receive a free copy of my book. Simply go to brandaid.com/free gift to receive your copy today. And you'll pay only for shipping and handling. Can you share a little bit more about that aspect of what you do and how you approach that part of the
for sure, Cheryl. Thanks. And I think you're touching on it right there, because there's obviously the life of the business owner and all the things that business owners are looking to accomplish during that time. But it's also when the business owner, it's a lot of times it's their baby, right? With their creation. And you cite Barney's, but something that a business owner has created, they want to see that live on as well. First of all, just the mere pride of it. But there's other reasons as well. There's a lot of times it's contributing to the livelihood of employees. It's contributing to the livelihood of communities.
Very
right?
many, exactly.
Right. So there's an importance to a legacy in that regard as well. One of the other fundamental natures of a corporation is, again, if it's properly structured and set up to survive, is its perpetual existence. Right. So a corporation will survive if there's a plan in place for that. So that legacy involves that. I like to work with clients, and that's part of maximizing value as well. They know they're not going to be around forever. What does their exit look like? The sooner you start planning that means to an end, right? Thinking about what the exit looks like, the better the likelihood of it being successful. So I'll give you an example. For a business owner, we're saying to them, is there a potential for you to sell to employees? Is there a management opportunity to sell to this company? Are you looking to sell to a competitor? Are you looking, there's companies like, there's a lot of companies that are conglomerators. They'll buy different companies. So have an end goal in mind. And again, have the company structured for just that. Entrench it with agreements. So there's a bunch of here's another example with a Cheryl's agreement. If the idea is to sell to a conglomerate in the future, make sure there's a Cheryl's agreement in place that forces all the shareholders to sell at the appropriate time when an offer is delivered. So that's the legacy for a company, to think about what their exit's going to actually look like and entrench it in agreements. It protects the business owners and it protects the value of the business.
And do you work with that from the very beginning, or is it something you develop as someone gets closer to deciding to exit?
So usually when I start to work with a client, it's one of the things I talk about. So in the initial intake, I say, what do you think? A lot of times they don't know, and that's fair enough as well. But I make sure it's something that's discussed, because at a minimum, I want to ensure that we can bring other shareholders in if need be. So that's another big way to sort of inject into a company to help see it grow. And then I say, what's the potential sale here? There are ways of introducing things like family trust to maximize a reduction in capital gains on a sale. So I'll look to say, is there potential for to be growth in this company? If so, do we need to implement a structure that's going to allow us to spread a capital gain in the future as well? So early conversation, a lot of times people say, great, JP, thanks for letting us know that you can introduce things like that at some point, maybe not necessarily now, but I make sure we talk about it right from the beginning or as early as we can in the process.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you mentioned something about estate. I think one of the things I've seen happen, which is especially with husband and wife businesses, is they'll form a company LLC, yep. And either one of the spouses is not in the LLC at all, or the company, or they may have a share of it, but then there's no step beyond that to take care, going back to that perpetual life issue,
yes,
the entity of the next step to make certain that there is either a will or a trust so that ownership of those shares are dealt with and don't end up in a probate court in America somewhere.
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of my concerns with a single member LLC, right? Is what's the succession for the company look like? Or make sure it's been thought through about who could take over, who could run things if need be. Ideally, as to say, you're operating with a corporation with multiple shareholders and there's some kind of transition there. But if it's not in place, at least so that there is some thinking about what would happen if a business owner died, what would the future, who could operate it if need be, and what would the transition plan look like? Absolutely important. You say that you don't want to have people arguing about it and maybe a judge deciding in a probate court where it's to finally be awarded. You're just going to destroy the value of the company.
So, we don't want this to be all about the law. So I want to talk about can you share with the audience a bit more about your book and when is it? It's coming out soon?
Yep. Yeah. January 31st is the official launch date. And so the book itself, as I say,
so this is your pre-launch tour.
It's my pre-launch. Absolutely. I've started the circuit now. So Cheryl, thanks for allowing me to speak about it. Because the book itself, I cite a number of examples of businesses that I've worked with, and I essentially tell their story, right, and what's allowed them to get to the spot where they are successful. And in it, I think there's a lesson both from a legal perspective to each of the things that I describe in it, but there's also sort of a business or life moral to it as well. For example, I talk about how, like you said, be prepared, right? An example of being prepared. I worked with a business owner that wasn't prepared and had a heart attack. And he had a heart attack, and actually he had a divorce for the third time.
Oh my goodness!
So three times divorced, and
that's enough to give you a heart attack.
That's enough to give you a heart attack, right? So we discussed what that looked like or what the situation might be, and so he took obviously some legal. We got wills and things in place for him to address that, and a Cheryl's agreement in place that would address what would happen if he actually died. But it also put some life planning into place for him because he got much closer to his family at the same time, which is obviously important.
No, that's great, because I think that's where people underestimate the value of a good attorney. I mean, there's the legal aspect, but there is also the life aspect of trying to, practically, because I too have seen that situation where people didn't have things in place and then something happened, and the consequences of that can be devastating.
It's tragic, right? As attorneys, we see it, and we see what it costs to have a judge decide things for you, right? If you don't have things planned, and there's a problem, you may have to take it to a judge. I mean, just by necessity, the law is structured in a way that if we haven't set things up for ourselves properly, and there's no other way of having things determined, then you're going to have a judge decide things for you. And that's unfortunate. It's costly to do it, and likely it may very well end up with a result that you didn't want to see to begin with.
That you didn't want. Absolutely. And I mean, I say that to clients all the time, because I'm working with a client right now, they're trying to mediate a dispute. And I'm like, there's nothing wrong with mediation, but you're also asking a stranger that knows nothing about you and nothing about your company or your business to make a decision, and you're rolling the dice because there's some good mediators, but there's some not so great mediators out there in my experience,
Yeah. You're just entrusting, you're just putting it into in a form that it doesn't need to be, with a little bit of planning and putting some proper paperwork into place. That's all it is. So you encourage people to get there. I say many times to people, look, I get paid better if you don't do it. Right.
Exactly. That's how I feel.
You say to people all the time, like, I can fix it for you. Of course, I'd rather see you have it done right to begin with, and I can guide you there if you wish. But please know that if you don't do it that way and it comes back to me, I'm likely to be paid better later on to fix it for you. So decide, either pay me now or pay me later.
What's the old saying? There's an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Is a lot better than a pound of cure. So tell me about the Millionaires Podcast.
Thank you, Cheryl. So Millionaires Podcast. I mean, what a wonderful platform, right?
Yes, it's fabulous.
And it's an opportunity for experts such as yourself and myself to get together and talk about issues and have listeners benefit in the experience. I mean, both you and I, at our hourly rates, a conversation for a client sitting around a table would be quite expensive. They get the benefit of the conversation that we're having on the podcast. I do the exact same thing on my podcast. I like to bring on thought leaders, experts. I work with a lot of accountants. I got a lot of work from accountants and other lawyers. We have them on the show, and we talk about the range of issues that a client growing and selling their business is going to be faced with. Eventually, hopefully, selling their business, so they can get some sense of what that looks like through the podcast itself, in addition to just talking to their own advisors.
Yeah. Well, if there was one piece of advice you could give a business owner who's growing their company, I know that's a broad question, but based on the things you've run into and you deal with every day as an attorney, what would be probably the most common obstacle you see that business owners either overlook or don't think about?
Thank you. I think that the biggest thing is for a business owner to get advice. You and I as attorneys, we look at things and we see them, and how many times do we look at it and say, I wish I had got my hands on this earlier. I could have done something more at a different time. People are afraid to talk to attorneys. They think that we're so expensive to talk with. As we just finished saying, obviously there's a cost, but we can be a lot more expensive if you haven't done things. So I always say to people, and again, through the benefit of the podcast, I'm saying get advice earlier in the stage if it's possible to do so, because you're going to benefit in the long run.
Yeah, well, that's good advice. Well, before we wrap up today, I want to turn to a couple of other issues, which are a little bit more personal. Like, I always love to share with the audience something that people might not realize about you. One of which I know already from personal experience, you throw a mean axe.
Yes, absolutely. We'll have to maybe describe that a bit more. But yes, as an axe thrower, maybe it's my Canadian heritage, right? We're out in the outdoors so often. But yes, I certainly enjoy, I mean, all things physical, but the axe throwing has been a fun pursuit of mine in the past. And I'm glad that we had a chance to do it together.
Yeah, I share that with the audience because we were at a workshop together where we met, and we were all surprised that we were taken on a little adventure unknowingly, and we went to a place where you throw axes at a wall. And of course, I don't think I ever hit the wall once. And JP was up there just bullseye every time.
Whipping that axe, that's true.
Yeah. And also, I understand you play in a band.
Yes, I do. Thank you very much. A shout out to the Broken Windows is the name of my band. You'd label us as I don't guess we're not a garage band because we actually rent space and jam in the space itself, but gig on occasion, and we call us late alternative rock wannabe stars. So a lot of fun to get out. I'm a singer and a guitarist, so I like to get out there.
You're the lead singer, huh?
Lead singer, that's right.
Oh my God, I can't wait to come to a show. That's going to be fun. So, if there's one thing on your bucket list, either personally or professional, and you could have two, but is there anything that it's kind of like you have the itch that you dream of really experiencing that you haven't so far?
Oh boy, what a great question. I got a whole list of things. I say one or two. Yeah. I'm planning one right now, actually. That would be fun to share with your listeners. In that I'm a golfer as well. I like to golf. And as is my father. And we are right now planning to play in a golf tournament in Ireland. In the midsummer 2020. He's a little bit older, obviously, than me, obviously, but
I hope so.
Yeah, I would think so, right? But his game is still pretty decent, and mine, I guess, will hold up. So yeah, we plan to play in an international.
What's your handicap?
I'm an 11.
Well, that's pretty good.
Yeah, enough to hold up anyway. So we'll be age and category specific, and I think it'll be a lot of fun to compete in an international golf event.
How exciting! Now, where in Ireland is this?
It's at 5 courses actually around Ireland. It's played at sort of some of the big courses in Ireland.
Oh, so this is an Irish tour. You're going to go
essentially an Irish tour. They set up a golf tournament called the Causeway Tournament every year for international people to come and play the different courses.
Okay, and I assume there'll be a pub at the end of the 18th hole.
I think there'll be a 19th hole after each specific round. I'm sure there'll be a 19th hole.
A 19th hole. That's it. Okay. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Do you have anything you'd love to share with our guests, the audience, of how they can reach you, how they
yes.
If you have a special gift for them, how they could make sure they get a copy of your book or reach a copy?
Absolutely. Oh, thanks for the opportunity, Cheryl. Yes, of course. So we mentioned the book. The book's coming out probably at the same time that the people will be listening to this. They can find the book at jpmcavoy.com, which is jpmcavoy.com. On the website for the book, you'll see that as well. I also have something I call the Millionaire's Lawyer Assessment, which allow people to go through and consider where they're at in terms of their own business right now and some of the ways that they might be able to fix things up. Through that, they say they could leverage the book itself, and then eventually we're going to have a course, an online course that people can take to learn some of the things that we're talking about here today.
Okay, great. And is the assessment available at the same location, same URL?
Yeah, so you'll find everything at jpmcavoy.com, jpmcavoy.com.
Okay, and we will put that in the show notes for those of you who are listening audio and don't have the opportunity to write it down. So it will be in the show notes. And I want to thank you so much, JP. It was wonderful having you here. And would you come back again at some point in the future?
Cheryl, thanks so much for having me on. And of course, I'd love to be back. It's always nice. Wherever we connect, it's always good. And I think we always create and give value to all those around us. So
I hope so. Yeah. And it's always a joy to speak with you, and good luck with the book, and tune in everyone to the Millionaires Podcast. I think you'll learn a lot. And welcome and have a great day.
Thanks so much. We'll see you next time.
JP McAvoy is the founder and managing partner of Conduct Law, practicing corporate and commercial law. JP acts for clients in buying, growing, and selling their business, representing a diverse range of corporations in Canada, the United States, and Asia. JP is the host of The Millionaire's Lawyer, a 5-star rated podcast on a variety of topics from business, legal, and accounting perspectives. Have you protected your big ideas? Is your online business built on a strong legal and business foundation? To learn more about the legal protection you need for your online business and how to use intellectual property to leverage the growth and profitability of your business, check out our new mini-sode series, Built to Last. I'll be sharing what I've learned during my business and legal career and how you can use those lessons to build a lasting legacy for your own business. So join me for my solo flight on the Brand Aid Built to Last mini-sodes.
That's it for today's episode. Head on over to brandaidpodcast.com and subscribe to the show. When you subscribe, you'll instantly receive Cheryl's free special gift, Consumer Guide to Trademark Registration Services. This consumer guide will help ensure your most valuable business assets are entrusted to professionals. Make certain you're on the path to a business and brand built to last. Join our Brand Aid community on the Podopolo mobile app to win prizes, products, and cool free resources to help you grow your business. And also connect with Cheryl and your friends. Podopolo is free on the Apple and Google App Stores. And when you go to brandaidpodcast.com/win and post a review to iTunes, you'll be entered into a drawing to win a once-in-a-lifetime VIP Brand Aid opportunity to mastermind with Cheryl personally to grow and scale your business, or to select, secure, and sustain a valuable brand name for your business. That's Podopolo on the Apple and Google App Stores. Download it now.